My name is Kidin Jonathan, and I come from Sudan. I came to Canada in 1999. I had my baby, and bombs were dropped in Juba town. I panicked. I was terrified. My husband said, "We cannot live here. We need to leave this country."
I came to Canada in July of 1974. Arriving here, it was difficult because I was alone, just with my husband. My kid was 2 years old, so I left her with my parents in Guyana, and I came here alone.
I am from Ethiopia. My family and I moved to Canada in February 2021. Saying goodbye to my mom, who was 92, was the hardest. I remember sobbing hysterically till the airport. Even though it was my elder son's birthday, we did not feel like celebrating. Everybody was just lost in their own thoughts. I had so many emotions bottled up inside of me.
I spent 7 years in East Africa, between Uganda and the refugee camps in Kenya. I would live somewhere for 2 years, and then I had to relocate and leave everything and then start again. When I arrived to Canada, my impression was that things are going to be beautiful. There's no more suffering, no more poverty, and just opportunities.
As a new immigrants, we encounter lots of frustrations and hurdles it's hard to overcome. My name is Carmen Gao. My Chinese name is Tong Gao. I originally come from Beijing, China. So in 1999, I arrived in Toronto. Right after I arrived here, I found I was pregnant. I didn't know what to do because during that period of time, right after you arrived, you are not under the coverage of OHIP card. So I went to a high school because there is a temporary summer clinic that opened, helped me. Also, I got the support from the community as well. And they helped me to find the baby supplies because I was poor, right? I don't have money to buy so many. So they helped me. My first baby crib was from them. I didn't even know their name.
I always was fascinated by Canada, the culture. We were told by friends that life would be difficult, it would be a struggle. However, there was excitement as well.
Coming from Guyana, which is quite different, that shock, just landing at the airport. So forget who you are, who you were in your country. When you land at Pearson, you have to start all over again.
Starting over is a big challenge. You're intimidated a bit, you're not certain about making new friends, and the anxiety of a new country.
You have to start that whole thing again, meeting new friends, meeting new families. You leave your country, coming here for a better opportunity to go back home. But that was not the case. When you finish, this becomes your home.
As for me, I really felt lonely. The only thing I remember was reaching for the phone and calling as much as possible. I came from a minority ethnic group called Harari. We're known for a lot of arty crafts, basketry, and I did not even have space to bring that. All I could do was, glance at pictures of them. I remember cheering up when putting those objects away in my home somewhere safe.
We were told that it would be very difficult to find jobs, especially because of our age. How do you get the Canadian experience if you're not getting a job?
My background was a salesperson in IBM in China. So I set up very high expectation for my job here. However, North America working experience was so important for each newcomer.
I knew as an educated immigrant, I would feel an occupational downgrading, but I had no idea that doors would shut out on me. I felt rejection after rejection. My background was in law. I had an extensive experience. I had worked as a human rights lawyer, as a senior legal advisor. That experience doesn't matter that much. It's like they're reducing everybody and putting them in one basket, you know. The whole process is not inclusive for immigrants. The way you're supposed to dress up like a Westerner, the way your hair is supposed to be, it's just a copy of the Western style.
One of my friends told me that I could do cold calling. I worked in No Frills as a cashier as well. That was not a good experience working there.
My base salary was $1,200. I have to use that money to support a family of 4. That's really hard. For the rental, it costs you $800, so $400. We did have a question, why we're here?
Getting an apartment was difficult because we didn't have income.
I remember, you working from pay to pay, like paycheck to paycheck. You're going into the stores, you have to put everything on the cashier. How much do I have? Is that enough? And then you have to look to see, what do I have to put back? It was rough, right?
When people see you, they don't know who you are. It reduced me to just being a mom, right? I thought I lost one part of my identity. I've been driving for about 25 years in my country. And here, I still have to wait for my husband to take me to errands, and that is one challenge as well.
One of the things that I experienced when I landed here, and it's funny now, but it wasn't then. One of my friends was sitting next to me. I sat next to her, and she moved over a bit. From my dress, he could smell the spices. It wasn't very appealing to people. We were not aware of all these different microaggressions and all that. At least maybe at the back of my mind, it was a hazy thought.
Sometimes it's not very clear, but you feel it and you see it happening. Racism is just on my face, So you are darker, you must be in the corner somewhere.
Now when I look at, for example, a movie or a cartoon, I question why it is this, and I don't like it, the way it is portrayed.
You always see a gap, especially when it comes to youths, black youths, how they're treated and that kind of thing, the struggle they go through. I mean, in schools, when you go to school, these kids are taught you cannot be anything. There's teachers who are telling you can be nothing. So they need people in the corner who can advise them and help them to get out of that. I felt that I could fill in that gap by organizing stuff so that we can always get people together so they can get together, share their feelings, share their concerns. I think I've been able to transform some lives.
We can add a lot of value to the Canadian experience. We can contribute to the culture, we can share our own stories, we can contribute skills, we can bring skills to the economy.
I think we add a lot, we do. It's just that maybe people don't see it.
Being able to express those feelings through art helps. When we feel something inside and we are not able to express it, it stays in us and it builds up, right? So if we are able to let it out in some sort of expressive, creative art form, it not only helps us, our well-being, but it also is a medium through which you can reach out and touch other people's life.
I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back to school. So I got my bachelor's at Ryerson. That was happy moments. Things began to get a little better and start to just ease down.
I came to know that the best job I was fit for was information and referral facilitator, and I didn't know what that was, but it really was the right job for me. I could help because that's my passion. So I wouldn't call it the job, it was my life.
The women of courage, right? Why we just love this program?
Because we bonded. We not only understood the struggles, but we also were happy for the victories. that each one was able to achieve. And so it's inspiring.
I'm very concerned about women's issue.
The whole culture of a woman has to be quiet, she has to serve, but not say anything. And I challenge that. And they're not going to like it, but that's okay.
Courage means standing up for who you are and telling your story.
Courage means that you are able to take that risk because you also see something good in it. And you are testing your strength through that. I think life is life. There's always going to be challenge.
I'm a person that works from my heart. If you want love, you have to love yourself. Whatever it is you're looking for, it has to be within you first. You have to be positive at all times.
My name's Shireen Toby Paul. I'm still from St. Lucia, and I arrived in 2001. I was 21 years old, and even before I arrived here, I would color my leaves red. I always felt Canadian. I don't know how to explain that. I knew after college I'd be coming to Canada. My cousin was a nanny here, and so I came as a nanny.
My name is Chen Wai-Yin, but I go by Wei Chen. I was born in Zanzibar. It's a little island off of the east coast of Tanzania, which is in East Africa. I moved to Canada when I was 13. My siblings were already in Canada, and my parents really just wanted to pull the family back together again.
My name is Tina Opari, and I immigrated to Canada from Ghana when I was 7 in 1988. You come with the hope and the excitement, meeting new people, it's a new culture, new things to get used to, new food.
My arrival was just shock after shock after shock. There was snow everywhere. 48 hours I went from cotton dresses to itchy long johns. So that was a big change.
I was excited for a new adventure. My employers picked me up at the airport with jacket and boots and an apple, which is what I requested because I wanted a Canadian apple. It was seamless being able to call as soon as I arrived. Of course, everybody's waiting for that call to know that you made it.
My name is Khadija Ismail. I'm from Karachi, Pakistan, and I moved here the year of 9/11, 2001. After moving here, I faced racism and Islamophobia, and I had to lose this hijab, which was part of my identity. This was my new persona here now.
I have no memories from when I was born until the age of about 6. When we came here, there were some child psychologists that I had to speak with, and they explained to my mom that the events that I had experienced were so traumatic that as a coping mechanism, I had locked those events away.
The main thing where it started was with housing. People would start saying, oh, your accent is not Canadian. Then I would go visit, and people would just look at me and just say no.
And I remember that I couldn't speak English that well, so I was in ESL. I had a really nice teacher. She was very kind and patient, as there were about 10 of us, and we all grew very close. They all came from different countries. At that point, I didn't feel different, but it was when the ESL was over and I integrated into the mainstream classes that I felt different.
My landlady came to me and she kind of held me on trial for this incident which happened in the United States and got very aggressive, verbally abusive, and started that whole incident about Muslims being terrorists, and her son actually threatened physical violence at me.
They called me chocolate, and I just thought, oh, okay, well, that's strange. You're a child, you don't clue into these things. And then the N-word started being passed around. And then in grade 8, I remember it was graduation day. We all got dressed up. One guy, a white guy, said to me, "You're pretty for a black girl."
Learning about the racism and anti-racism framework gave me language. I can go there. I have language to use for myself, but also with my children, with my family, with the people that I'm interacting with.
At that time, you just don't have the language, and you want to believe the best of everyone. I just thought, it can't possibly be demeaning. They don't mean it like that. But then, year after year you hear it and it just weighs you down until eventually you just have no choice but to take the blinders off.
It's based more on ignorance. Ignorance generates fear. Why are people not willing to get more educated? Why are you not opening your doors and windows to listen?
I have all this pent-up anger and energy that the Women of Courage program has actually helped me connect to. It just opened up a world of healing for me.
Growing up, I tried my best to just put away the Ghanaian part of myself. I tried to be like everyone else. But in doing that, it's half of yourself. So you never feel totally yourself.
The question around when did I start feeling comfortable? I think that's a hard one to answer. I dropped my accent. I learned English really, really quickly. I went to ESL. I went to ESL camp. It was about assimilating and fitting in. 40 years later, I'm actually sitting with, am I comfortable?
I face a lot of Islamophobia. Hijab is not just the identity. I think my language is how I present myself, how I communicate.
I spent all of my life in Canada being a model minority. All my experiences of racism or oppression, I just brushed them under the carpet. The result of that is that, I burnt out.
I know that I put in hours upon hours more than my colleagues. Most people leave around 4:30. Sometimes I'm leaving at 6 o'clock and not going home to just put it away, but going home to do more work. And it was that hope and that desire that eventually it would be enough. Eventually it would be recognized. But it just never is, and I just need to stop, and that's difficult.
You assimilate, you work really, really hard. You work twice, maybe even 3 times as hard, right? And how many of us do that?
My mom was the same. She was working 3 jobs, so I hardly ever saw her. She would be up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and then she would finish one job at 2:30, go to another job for about 4 hours, and then go to a third job. And so she wouldn't get home until about 11:30, midnight.
This is a society that depends on immigrants. Our economy depends on immigrants. But do we value them? So I spent, 3 decades in healthcare, and if you look at the healthcare system, if you look at the numbers, people who look like me make the majority of frontline, make the majority of the names that are on a lot of the work that gets done. And then if you look at the top layer of the decision makers, it is not people that look like me. We know that healthcare is just one industry. That is the case for all industry. My hopes for the future is that I hope that we can all work towards that representation.
There is not enough public education for new immigrants to know how to navigate the system. You're learning through error, and then decades go by.
That feeling, day after day, trying to make yourself as Canadian as possible, it just wasn't enough. No one should ever have to feel like that. We need to honor all parts of ourselves.
There's all these little gaps out there, and I think that's what I feel, that the BIPOC community, actually we're here, we're filling those gaps. That's the multiculturalism that I've seen, but mostly it is BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, all trying to help each other out.
I used to volunteer at the children's schools, and whomever was in the community, I'd take their trash out without their asking. There was one lady I think I used to help with groceries. I would go get her. She'd give me a list and her little money in the envelope. It was so cute. When someone asks me what I do now, I say, I serve.
In my language, we have a saying called sankofa. Sankofa, basically, the long of it is sanwachinakofa, which means you can always go back and get it. And it pertains to our roots and how you can always find your roots.
It takes a lot to put yourself out there and share your story and let people, and be vulnerable. It's, that alone is courageous.
We have these cultural skirts, so similar fabric, colorful, and they're long and flowing. They go all the way down to the ground. And I remember a colleague who I thought I was friends with. We were fairly close. She said to me, "Do you own a pair of pants?" I wasn't quite sure why she felt the need to ask that. And then there was a few instances where I was told by way of a compliment, "Oh, I love your costume." Now that I'm older, now that I care less what people think, it's easier for me to be able to embrace both parts of myself.
And that's the courage. It's the allowing others to see me and not, hiding the difficult parts.
Authentically, I've always aligned with not hiding, not having to assimilate, not having to only do X, Y, and Z because that's expected.
I remember bringing my children to the library one day, and I found on the board the Writers Collective of Canada, and that's taken me on quite a trip.
I think that's the power of storytelling. I saw it with my own mom. She was so traumatized with the Japanese War, and so she wouldn't talk about it. And then as we shifted her story, and as she started, talking about her childhood, it's almost like a healing happened. I started hearing some beautiful stories about her childhood, things that she never talked about before. Things like when she was a little girl, there was a fish pond. Her dad actually had a beehive.
It's almost like planting my life again. It's like I was 21 when I came here, going places that I didn't think I would be, and just being able to evolve and grow into that.
Women bonding happened for me here a lot. Pushing to get yourself to the table to be heard is what a courageous woman represents to me today.
It takes courage to talk about your traumatic experiences. It takes courage to be willing to visit that.
I've tried hiding so much, and it's so obvious that I'm not to do that. There's something in everybody's story for someone, and those who need it will take it, and those who don't, please be silent. It's not for you, it's not for you, and that's okay. But you don't need to break down my experience when it's brilliant for somebody else.
We just all listen, acknowledge each other's presence, and hear each other. We can speak to each other's soul, and we can understand each other. Basically, we are all humans, and we're all Canadians.
My name is Rita Burke. I was born in South America, in Guyana, and I arrived in Canada in 1973, the 10th of February. When I came here, the only person that I knew was my husband. I had no aunts, no uncles, no cousins, no friends. And so when he went to work, I would leave our rooming house, our room, and sit in Woolworths for most of the day and smiled to myself and read the newspapers and smiled at strangers until I became somewhat acclimatized to being here.
My name is Jolly Abrakasa. I am from Nigeria, originally from Nigeria. I first came to Canada in 1981. We arrived in Northern Ontario the first week of November. There was snow up to the roof of every house.
No one had prepared me for the weather. My word, the cold.
And I thought, where have I landed?
I'm Dr. Meenakshi Das, an immigrant from South Asia. I started my career in United Nations to work for the marginalized and disadvantaged. I was in the peak of my career as a professor in a reputed university. But the first day when I arrived over here, I was not accepted as a professor.
I had just finished my PhD, but it was not good enough to get a job. I had to give up my career. My name is Shashmita Gupta. I came from India, and I came in 2002.
I came as a qualified British nurse, and I was told, you cannot enter a hospital and become a nurse until you jump through a certain number of hoops.
I graduated from Teachers College in 1981 before I came here, but I could not get my Ontario teacher certificate until 1990. I was a supply teacher for 12 years.
When I was here and with my daughter in the park, so a white man told me without knowing my background that you won't get a job here because you are a colored woman, because my color is not white. He didn't know what was my background, that I have a very good academic background.
A lot of the immigrant women who are coming to Canada are also very well educated.
When I drop here without money, it's really hard. It's a real struggle.
My parents
were forced to give up their culture, their language, so much of themselves. And indirectly, so were a lot of the immigrants that came. My name is Adila Qureshi, and my parents came here from Pakistan when I was a toddler. As a young child, I'd hear being called Paki. I realized very young that I was different.
I remember one occasion where the postman had left my neighbor's mail in my mailbox. So I thought, the good thing to do was to take it over. He grabbed it and just shut the door in my face. Not even a word of thank you.
I had a lot of struggle to find my job for almost a year. The professor who interviewed me at Mohawk College, he said, I will make sure, until I am here, I will make sure that you are not going to get any position in this college. And I said, why? And he had no answer to that why. He says, just get out of my office. I didn't know how to challenge it. We were very young and very new to the country and new to the place. We did not know what to do. It took me 2 years to get back the courage to even face anybody else in the world.
I still don't have a full-time job, even though I have been attached with the York University for last 10 years. They said that it's a recession going on. We don't have the financial strength to hire a senior professionals. But I see universities also hiring senior professionals, more big stature than me, people that they are not immigrants.
My mom came from India to support me. So he said, no, get up. Get going, do not stop. Shushmita itself means a beautiful smile. If I cry, nobody will cry with me.
If you have a smile, you feel happy and you carry forward yourself to do more, whatever you want. I do get strength to speak about it. The struggle that made me more strong. One day I will be whatever I want, whatever I want to achieve here.
That gave me strength back to get up and go ahead.
There are many immigrants, they came here with a dream, but when the dream is shattered, it's hard to digest.
If a woman has financial independence, the courage follows. And so if she's having a difficult time at work, at least she would have the money to say, I can leave.
Women who are coming from somewhere else are coming because they're courageous.
It's not just the immigrant parents that come, the onus is just not on them or their kids, but us as in a society as a whole to understand that we do have differences. I was different here for not being white, and I was different in the Pakistani culture for not being lighter skinned.
Having somebody to encourage them to say, your color is perfect, your hair is perfect. They grow up with that courage and they know they can do anything.
It wasn't until high school that I accepted my skin color. We were making masks. I went to the teacher and I said, I accidentally mixed the colors and the mask is now darker. And she took my hand and she said, I love your skin color. And that was the turning point for me. I have loved my skin color since I was in high school.
If I were to talk about the black culture, especially the black girls, they're told that, they're too dark. I come from the exact opposite. Growing up, I come from a cultural situation where the darker you are, the better for you. And so it was a thing of pride to be dark. The same thing with our hair. Everybody knows the issue of black hair. It's a big thing. I personally think black hair is a miracle. If I were to comb my hair, it stands up straight, defies gravity. How many things do that?
So it took me a long time to get to a point where I found my identity. My first marriage was an arranged marriage. I was 40 when I met my husband now. And it was really moving out of my parents' home and having his support to be who I am. I became my own person.
There were so many other people looking like me Many of them were coming from other nursing schools in Jamaica or the Caribbean or what have you. We had each other, we had each other's backs.
Respect to all the cultures, because we belong to a multicultural society in Canada.
Immigrants bring a lot of cultural richness. You have to make sure that you have a voice in the world.
I got involved fairly quickly in race relations in Northern Ontario. I was a member of the Sudbury Race Relations board. When I got there, I noticed that they did not have one single Indigenous person in their police service, and they did not have one single person of color. Representation matters.
I became a teacher. Today, I am the first racial equity woman in Hamilton Wentworth District School Board and an anti-harassment officer for my board.
At work, if there's younger girls that tell me that they don't feel heard, I want to make the difference for them.
Whenever there was somebody in need in our community where I grew up, my mom always found space for them in her house. And so I kind of grew up doing that as well.
Uplift others, not just think about yourself only. People have fear. They bring assumptions. Even simple activities like henna stations. What I heard from staff members is that, are you celebrating Diwali? And I said, no, I am celebrating diversity.
Perhaps if there's anything I could think about as a common thread or a unifying force, it would be food. There is a dish called cook-up rice. It's a complete meal in one pot. And that in itself is comforting.
I am proud of my own culture also, but I also adopt Canadian cultures, for example, Diwali. But then I make a blend of it with the Canadian culture is like Christmas.
Nothing has stopped me. All those roadblocks have actually made me more stronger and a beautiful person from outside and from within. Courage was that point when I pulled myself up.
That is what courage means to me, is being able to stand up and take action and do things against what people may want you to do.
We all, if you're an immigrant, we're coming from very, very different cultures. I had a student from Asia who was from a culture where they don't look people in the eye.
I remember a boss saying to me, so-and-so doesn't make eye contact when he talks. And I said, well, he's showing respect. And my boss's response was, well, now he's in Canada. Now that I'm in a management position, when we talk about some of the things to look for, eye contact is not one of them.
Courage means we will be afraid of something, but we have to go through it. A lot of immigrant women are doing that daily. They've been doing it and they're still doing it. Some of them because they can't go back to where they're coming from. Some of them because they see a better opportunity for their children. And so they continue.
Those skills that I acquired from 1973 coming into Canada, those resilient, resistant skills that taught me to survive in spite of microaggressions and racism and what have you, those are skills I consider to be portable. They're my suitcase and I travel with them, and they're survival skills.